3, the exponents, notes, and practice. So really here we're not even like doing anything new. We're just trying to identify these different pieces, put them together, and identify mistakes as we get ready for the test for next week. So here you go. So let's just remember our exponent rules. So we have 4 of them that are critical here, and then we'll see our extra one here on screen 2. And then, like I said, we'll work through kind of just some standard problems where it shows what's the mistake, identify the mistake. So product of power. So when you're asked to multiply with exponents, you should add the exponents. When you're asked to divide with the exponents, you should subtract the exponents. When you have what's called a power of a power, in other words, an exponent to another exponent, then you should multiply them. And we're never going to see a negative exponent. So if we see a negative exponent, what is that going to mean? We need to switch its location in the fraction. All right, and then our 2 base ones, anything to the first power is itself, and anything to the 0 power is 1. All right, so with that in mind, let's go through some of our screens here. All right, so here it says, what happened here? So they have 37 to the 0 equals 0. Okay, well, what's the mistake, right? The student did not use the 0 power correctly, right? All right, so then correct the mistake. Well, what should 37 to the 0 be, right? Well, let's type in our 37, right? So here we go, 37 to the 0. Well, what's anything to the 0 power, right? Anything to the 0 power is 1. So anything to the 0 power is 1, and then justify your thinking. Well, what we just said, right? Anything to the 0 power is 1. Okay? Alright, so then that's kind of what you're looking for there. Alright, so now here we're asked to match the unsimplified expression with the simplified expression. So notice everything we have here is a 3 and then an x and then a -2 or a +2. So the numbers are all kind of the same there. We just got to organize what would match with what when it simplifies. Alright, so let's look at that. Alright, so here I have 3 over x to the -2. So the 3 doesn't need to do anything. It's in the numerator. We need to make the x to the -2 positive. How do we do that? Well, instead of this being in the denominator, it needs to move to the numerator. So the x to the -2 moves to the numerator, becomes x squared. The 3 is going to stay where it is, so we get 3x squared. Well, that matches with this. All right, so next, I see x to the -2 in the numerator. Well, that's got to move to the denominator, which is where the 3 is. So you can have the 3x squared in the denominator. There won't be anything left in the numerator, so you got to put a 1 placeholder. And then these should match up, but just to check it, let's think about it. If I have 3 and then x to the -2, well, the 3 is in the numerator, it doesn't need to do anything. The x to the -2 needs to move to the denominator, so the 3 would stay where it is, and the x to the second would move to the denominator to become positive. Alright, so that's what we should have here. Alright, so now we got another question here about, having a mistake. So here they have y to the 3rd to the 5th equals y to the 8th. Okay, so what's the mistake here, right? Well, it looks like they added 3 and 5, right? They did 3 plus 5 to get 8. What should they have gotten? Well, y to the 3rd to the 5th should give us y to the 15th. And why is that? Well, because this is what we call power of a power, so an exponent to an exponent. And when you have a power of power, you should have multiplied. So you do 3 times 5. Okay. So let's look forward from there. So here we have 2x to the 3rd to the 5th is not 2x to the 8th. So what's the correct answer? All right, well, let's just sketch it out, right? So we know that that answer there is wrong. So let's think about what it should be, right? Okay, this 2 is inside the parenthesis, so we need to do this 2 to the 5th, right? So this is going to become like 2 to the 5th, and then x to the power of power multiply. 3 times 5. 15. Now we just need to know what 2 to the 5th is. You may know it, or if you don't, go here, use your calculator. 2 to the 5th power. What do we get? We get 32. Okay, so what do we get here? We get 32 and then x to the 15th. Okay? All right, so that's kind of what we're looking for there, and that's kind of what our answer should look like. If you want to type it in here specifically, 32x, to the 15th. Okay, now what did coach do wrong here, right? Show what your math is correct. Use an exponent rule if you've got it, right? Well, they made 2 mistakes, right? they did not do the 2 to the 5th power, and they added the exponents when they should have multiplied, right? Okay. All right, so let's look at two more that have these mistakes. So here we go. X to the 5th over x to the 9th is not x to the 4th. So what's the correct answer? Well, again, let's work it out. So when you're asked to divide with exponents, right, what do? We subtract. So 5 minus 9. Well, 5 minus 9 is negative 4. Okay? Well, we can't have that, right? We can't have a negative exponent. Remember, if there's no denominator, it's implied to be a 1. So this needs to move to the denominator to become positive. We have nothing left in the numerator, so it's just going to stay, and we need to put a 1 there. So that's what we should have. So let's write that in. 1 over x to the 4th power. Right? Now, what did they do wrong? Well, they subtracted, right? Because they still did the subtraction, but they did not move the x to the 4th to the denominator like they should have to get rid of the negative exponent, right? All right, so making sure that you understand these, we will see some questions like this come to the test where you got to identify that error, justify, what does it look like? All right, so one more like that to finish here. 2x to the 3rd times 4x squared is not 6x to the 6th. All right, so we know this is another one where we have something wrong, we need to fix it. So let's take a look at it and let's break each part down. Okay, so there's no parentheses, so there's no power to a power anything. Now here I see 2 times 4, right? Well, those are just coefficients. So you just multiply those like you always would back in elementary school. You get 8. And now you have x to the 3rd times x to the 2nd. When you're asked to multiply the exponents, you add them. So we should get x to the 5th. So really, they messed up both parts here, right? Okay, so what's my correct answer? It's 8x to the 5th. All right, we should have multiplied the coefficients and added the exponents, right? Instead, what did they do? They added the coefficients and multiplied the exponents. So they basically did both rules backwards, okay? All right, then from here, you should make sure that you go through and do screens 9 through 15 for this practice so that you can get prepared for the test. I hope this helps.